There's a point in everyone's financial life when things begin to feel different, quieter, steadier, almost as if the pressure you've carried for years finally starts to loosen its grip. Most people don't realize it at the time, but this shift usually appears around one milestone, the first $100,000 invested. It's not a magic number, yet it behaves like one, because reaching it forces you to develop habits, discipline, and resilience long before the money itself begins to make a noticeable impact. In the beginning, everything feels heavier than it should. You save as much as you can, you try to stay consistent, and you do your best to make decisions that future you would be proud of. Still, your account grows slowly, almost reluctantly, as if testing your patience. Anyone who has ever tried to build wealth from zero knows this phase intimately. It's the part of the journey where doubt shows up more often than results. But with time, something subtle starts happening. Your progress becomes more predictable. Your choices feel more intentional, and the money you've been working so hard to accumulate finally begins to work alongside you. That's why the first $100,000 matters so much. It marks the moment when the effort stops feeling like a battle and begins to feel like a plan unfolding. If you've ever tried to build wealth from scratch, you'll probably recognize a story like Alex's. He's 29, makes enough to live a comfortable but modest life, and has been trying to get ahead financially for years. He tracks his spending, avoids unnecessary debt, and invests whenever he can. On paper, he's doing everything right. Still, after half a decade of effort, his investment account hovers around $15,000. It's a respectable amount, until he compares it to the energy, sacrifices, and hours of work behind every dollar. That's when the discouragement creeps in. This is the part nobody warns you about, the treadmill phase. You're moving with intensity, but the scenery never seems to change. Every small step forward feels instantly swallowed by rent, bills, life, and time. You keep hoping for that moment when the numbers will suddenly take off, but instead you're met with progress that feels painfully slow. It's easy to assume you're doing something wrong, or worse, that the system simply isn't built for people like you. The truth is more subtle and more frustrating. In the early years, your contributions carry almost all the weight. Compound interest, the thing everyone praises, barely whispers. You invest $500 and your account grows by $18 or $22 in a month. Technically, that's progress. Emotionally, it feels like a joke. It's no surprise that so many people conclude investing doesn't work when their early results look like loose change. Add to that the world we live in, one designed for speed, convenience, and instant results, and the challenge becomes even harder. We're conditioned to expect quick feedback, not a multi-year delay before things get exciting. And because almost no one explains the true purpose of the first $100,000, people give up right before the numbers would finally start working in their favor. Once you understand why the early stages feel so discouraging, the next question becomes obvious. What changes after $100,000? The answer is found in the math, not complicated formulas, but simple principles that behave differently once your money reaches a certain scale. Below $100,000, your returns feel like background noise. Above $100,000, they begin to have weight, rhythm, and momentum. At this level, a reasonable 7% annual return generates around $7,000 per year. That's money appearing in your account without requiring overtime, side gigs, or extra discipline. It's enough to cover a car payment, a month of rent in some cities, or an entire year of groceries if you're frugal. And the impact only grows when those earnings stay invested, because every dollar of return strengthens the base that will generate future returns. The timeline becomes even clearer when you follow a realistic path from $0 to $1 million. Saving $10,000 a year at a 7% return takes roughly 7.8 years to reach the first $100,000, a stretch dominated almost entirely by your own contributions. But the second $100,000 takes about 5.1 years. You're still working hard, but now the market is carrying nearly half the load. By the time you reach the third $100,000, compound interest overtakes you. You contribute some, but your money contributes more. What once felt like pushing a boulder uphill now feels like guiding something that's rolling on its own. And when your net worth passes $500,000, annual returns can exceed $35,000, more than triple your yearly contributions. This is the moment when wealth begins to feel inevitable. The same math that once felt unbearably slow becomes the force accelerating everything forward. When your investments finally cross the $100,000 mark, the transformation isn't just financial, it's deeply psychological. Something shifts in how you see money, how you make decisions, and how you interpret progress. Up until this point, every step required effort, planning, and constant discipline. But now you've proven to yourself that long-term consistency actually works, and that proof changes the way you think. You begin to view money less as something that slips through your fingers, and more as a tool that responds to your behavior. Small decisions that once felt insignificant start to make sense in a bigger context. You understand, perhaps for the first time, that time is your greatest financial advantage, and not something you're constantly trying to outrun. This milestone also brings a sense of stability that's hard to describe until you experience it. You're no longer operating from fear or urgency. You have room to breathe, to make choices with a clearer mind. Career decisions become less reactive because you're not depending on every paycheck with the same intensity. Risk becomes something you can evaluate calmly, not something that threatens your entire safety net. And maybe the most powerful shift of all, you finally trust yourself. You've built discipline, delayed gratification, and pushed through years of uncertainty. The confidence that comes from that process doesn't disappear. It grows, guiding every financial move you make from this point forward. Reaching your first $100,000 may feel distant, but once you understand which levers truly move the needle, the path becomes far more predictable. The first lever is your income. Most people focus entirely on cutting expenses, but there's a clear limit to how much you can cut. Your ability to increase your income, however, has no ceiling. Developing more valuable skills, negotiating a raise, switching companies, or stepping into roles that the market rewards more generously can accelerate your progress far more than a year of small sacrifices. Making full use of benefits like employer match programs, HSAs, or other workplace incentives adds free money many people unknowingly leave untouched. The second pillar is managing your expenses, but doing so strategically. Instead of trying to cut everything, focus on what truly moves the numbers: housing, transportation, and food. Adjustments in these areas can free up hundreds of dollars each month, and when redirected toward investing, they significantly shorten the time required to reach your goal. Reviewing forgotten subscriptions, reorganizing priorities, and identifying habits that don't add real value helps you build an environment that supports long-term growth. The third pillar is consistent, uncomplicated investing. You don't need to be a market expert to build wealth. In fact, for most people, low-cost index funds outperform the stress and guesswork of trying to pick individual stocks. Automating your contributions removes the need for constant motivation and reduces the emotional noise that often derails financial decisions. Using tax-advantaged accounts amplifies your growth over the years. When these three pillars work together, rising income, optimized spending, and disciplined investing, the path to your first $100,000 stops looking unrealistic and starts becoming a matter of time and consistency. Reaching $100,000 is a financial milestone, but staying on the path long enough to get there is almost entirely a mental game. The early years demand a kind of persistence that doesn't feel exciting or glamorous, so the mindset you bring into this process often matters more than any spreadsheet or strategy. This is where understanding how you think becomes just as important as understanding where your money goes. One of the most powerful shifts is learning to rely on systems instead of motivation. Goals are useful, but they tend to fade whenever life gets stressful or unpredictable. Systems, automatic transfers, scheduled contributions, predefined savings rates, keep working whether you feel inspired or not. Over time, they become a quiet engine running in the background, removing the emotional friction that usually derails financial progress. Another essential part of the mindset is recognizing the value of milestones along the way. The jump from $0 to $10,000, then to $25,000 and $50,000 might not feel dramatic, but acknowledging those steps gives you a sense of progress that your account balance alone won't provide. These small victories remind you that your efforts are stacking, even when the growth still looks modest. Education plays a role too. The more you learn about money, the less intimidating it becomes. You start to understand the mechanics behind your progress, which gives you confidence to stay consistent. Surrounding yourself with people who take financial growth seriously reinforces that mindset even further. This combination, systems, milestones, learning, and environment, creates the mental stability required to stay committed until the momentum finally shifts in your favor. When your investments finally cross the $100,000 mark, the experience feels different in a way that's hard to understand until you're living it. The numbers begin to move with more weight. Your returns start showing up in amounts that actually matter. Instead of feeling like you're pushing every dollar uphill, the process begins to feel more like guiding something that finally has momentum of its own. Mathematically, this is the point where compound interest becomes a real force in your life. As seen previously, a 7% return on $100,000 adds several $1,000s a year without requiring a single extra hour of work. That growth reinforces your discipline because you can finally see the impact of the habits you spent years building. Emotionally, the shift is just as strong. You become less reactive with money because you don't feel like everything depends on the next paycheck. Decisions that once felt risky, switching careers, negotiating your salary, exploring new opportunities, become easier to consider because you have a cushion that protects you. There's a calmness that comes from knowing your money can support you instead of constantly needing your protection. Reaching this milestone doesn't make you wealthy, but it changes your trajectory. If the journey to $100,000 feels overwhelming, the best way to begin is by focusing on what you can do today. Not someday, not when things feel easier, but now. The first step is understanding where you currently stand. Calculate your net worth by listing what you own and subtracting what you owe. It's a simple exercise, yet it creates clarity, and clarity is fuel. You can't build momentum without knowing your starting line. Next, set up automatic investments, even if the amount feels small. A consistent $100 a month is infinitely more powerful than investing whenever you remember. Automation turns good intentions into actual progress, and it protects your future from your present-day mood, stress, or lack of motivation. From there, shift part of your energy toward increasing your income. Update your resume, refine your skills, explore freelance work, or look for opportunities that pay closer to the value you bring. Your income is one of the strongest tools you have, and every improvement compounds just like your investments. Finally, take a closer look at your spending. Not with guilt or restriction, but with intention. Identify where your money leaks away without improving your life and redirect those dollars toward your investment goals. Small changes, when repeated across months and years, fuel the fastest progress. The path to your first $100,000 isn't easy, but it's absolutely achievable. Every person who has built wealth started exactly where you are, with a first step, a bit of discipline, and a plan that grew stronger along the way. If this video helped you somehow, take a second to hit the like button. It really supports the channel. And if you're ready to stop chasing the illusion of success and start building real freedom, subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching,